So it rose for a little while, but there is some converts. Okay. Oops. All right. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to try to do a brief history of India, 4,000 years in about 20 minutes. So let's see how I can do it. So I might not make it. We'll see. We might only make it part way. Just bear with it. All right. There are two major ethnic groups in India. In the north are the Indo-Aryans, lighter skin by complexion, and the Dravidians in the south, darker skin by complexion. The Dravidians by anthropologists today are believed to be the original peoples of India, and the Aryans are seen as invaders who come out of the Central Asian steppes and push the Dravidians to the southern part. If you go to like usually here, if you see like Indian restaurants, like Indian food restaurants, they'll say which variety they are, north or south style Indian food with the different spices and things like that go along with it. So there's sort of a division there. Okay? So prehistoric, before there's writing, the Dravidians have a major civilization, a complex civilization, and this is before any other of the religions we really have a handle on in this course. 2500 to 1500 BCE in the Indus Valley, that's in modern-day Pakistan. India, when we talk about it before, sort of the modern period with different countries, is like greater India. It includes Pakistan, Bangladesh, those areas, Nepal. But the reason that we can see there's something about Hinduism, even from before there's writing, in the prehistoric period, some of the stuff they do is similar to, is the same as the stuff people do to this day that are part of Hinduism. So I'll have at least the one picture. There's a seal, there's a couple of seals, but there's one I've got that's pretty clear that the person sitting, I can't do it, but sitting cross-legged in the lotus position, and you see a seal of that in the prehistoric period. If you go to like yoga studios here today, people are still doing that same thing. That's really impressive, right? Like most things in human societies are like fads. They come and go and then they're gone. Like, oh, bell bottoms are cool, now they're not, like whatever. Right? But anything that lasts like for 4,000 years in human societies is super impressive, right? Another one that comes from this prehistoric period, the long phallic-shaped stones that are the symbols to the one god that we're going to look at, Shiva, a really popular god. Shiva is the god of destruction. Those are the same symbols that people still use to this day to worship Shiva. So it's impressive that there's things from this prehistoric period that have carried all the way through. So a little map here is India, here's Indus River Valley, Mohenjo-Daro, and Harappa, where these digs take place. I'll show a quick couple of archaeological pictures. If you're interested in any of this, in the slides, in the file section of lectures, in the bottom in the notes, there are links to the different digs, the museums, that kind of stuff, if you want a little more information about them. Okay. They've got baths. That's super impressive. We're normally like, oh, the Romans and the running water. This is like 1,500 years before the Romans even start doing that, right? Like, who's impressive now? So here's sort of the layout of the archaeological dig. Wells, you don't got to go to the river to get some water. Awesome. Private baths for rich people. I like it. I know this is gross, but without drainage of sewage, you know, like the first time there's a plague runs through, it just wipes everybody out. You've got to have sewage, right? So this is a major civilization, well before there's anything else. They don't have writing, but they have major developments for larger scale human societies. Here's a picture of the lotus. There's several of them. This is one that's clear enough that the picture shows through. You can see cross-legged and they're sitting in a certain position. You still see people doing that to this day. Right? So really impressive in that sense. The Aryans invade from the Central Asian steppes in about 1500 BCE in a wave of these invasions. They forced the Dravidians into the southern part of India. Okay. The reason we know this is the Aryans bring a writing system, Sanskrit. The word Aryan means noble or nobility in Sanskrit. That's what the word means. They come in, they're like, we're noble and everybody else is not. That's basically their notion, right? So they have a writing system, they can write that down. The language is Sanskrit. These are nomadic people, but the fact that they have writing, it gives us the first glimpse. We can kind of read what they believe, the kind of ritual practices they do. So we can get some sense for like, what is their religion like in this earliest ancient world period, okay? So as a result, Sanskrit's going to become a holy language, a sacred language for the sacred texts. The earliest sacred writings in Hinduism are the Vedas, which we'll talk about the Vedas a little more in depth on Monday. But the word Vedas just means knowledge in Sanskrit. It's the secret knowledge that a certain class of people have to do the rituals to connect to the gods. These are today the most venerated writings in Hinduism, but they are, nobody really practices the Vedic rituals anymore. It's basically, for the most part, completely died out. They're venerated because people are like, oh, they're so old, but nobody does that anymore. Right? So it's like that. Okay? But it gives us a glimpse for what were they doing in this earliest time period? What kind of things were they imagining about the unseen? One of the things we can get a sense for is their class system comes to dominate all of India. It's what later we'll talk about as the caste system. They describe it in a very simplistic way that'll help us to think about it. But at the top of their caste system are the people who know the secret words, the secret knowledge from the Vedas. That class at the top of this caste system are called the Brahmin. And they come to dominate late Aryan religion, and then later all the way through part of the history in India. Their focus, though, is on like unseen or hidden knowledge, esoteric knowledge. By doing the rituals the right way, saying the right word at the right time, the gods will be happy and give the various things that they're looking for. Many sons, victory in battle, good harvest, etc. So then, 6th century BCE is a time, if you take world history, that they'll talk about. It's called the Axis Age. We don't really know why so many developments happen in this time period that change religion and philosophy. But this is the time period in the Western hemisphere, the Western part of the Orkney in Europe, that you have like the development of the philosophic schools. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, right? And so we don't really know why there's big changes there. In India, there are likewise changes. It's sort of the revolution away from the Vedic period and the Brahmin doing all the rituals to a different style of religion. They start focusing on things like the soul, unseen phenomenon that anyone can do, different kinds of meditative and ascetic practices that doesn't matter which caste you're a member of, you can just go off and start fasting or meditating or whatever. So it changes away from what the Vedic period was. This is also the time period we'll see later on where two new religions emerge from India. The one we'll talk about mostly is Buddhism, but another religion that is somewhat global, much smaller, is Jainism. They both emerge during the same time period of the Axis Age. So I think it's on Wednesday we'll talk more about the texts that come out of the Axis Age, the Upanishads, and some of the description about what is the soul, how can you know it, what's it like, all those kind of things. But the big sort of shift here is away from, there's one class of people, they know the secrets, they do the rituals, they can appease and have relationships with the gods. In this revolutionary period, suddenly, it's not about doing things, external rituals, just the right way. It becomes about how do you know your soul? What are the ways by which you can, the knowledge of the soul can be revealed, revelation. And so all these different ascetic practices that anybody can do, low caste, middle caste, high caste, doesn't matter. Go off and be a hermit and do ascetic practices of all variety. Fasting, walking on coals, laying on bed of nails, yogic practices, different styles of meditation, right? Anyone can do those and have an experience, some kind of change in their consciousness or their psychology that makes them know about what's unseen, including the Atman or soul. And so we'll see on Wednesday more this kind of concept of what takes place in the Axis Age. Why is it different? So this is just an overview, quick and dirty, right? Alexander the Great is a student of Aristotle. He comes from Macedonia, marches a major army, basically from Macedonia all the way to Western China. It's the first time that the civilizations the civilizations of Greece and India come into contact. We'll see with certain words like that you maybe have seen in your text, Jnana Yoga and knowledge or gnosis, agnostic. We know that those words come from the same roots because of this time period where they come into contact. We'll see there's a few other things like some things in art history. It's the first time there's statuary developed. We believe that it's because the Greeks come, they communicate some things about their own religion, and they have statuary to illustrate it, and then Hinduism and also Buddhism start to develop statuary for their own religion. So it's the first time we kind of see that notion. The Mauryan Empire, sort of after Alexander and the first contact, Mauryan Empire exists for about 250 years. The reason that it's an important empire is it's the first time India is united under one banner. It's one kingdom or empire. It's named after its founder. Probably the most famous or successful ruler from the Mauryan Empire is King Ashoka. If you've ever played the game Sid Meier's Civilization, one of the countries you can play as is India, and one of the rulers you can play as is King Ashoka. We'll talk about him a little more in Buddhism because he's the one who sends people out of India to spread Buddhism. Today in India, there's really not a lot of Buddhists. Buddhism basically fades, even though it emerges from India, it's basically wiped out. If King Ashoka hadn't sent out people out of India to spread Buddhism, Buddhism probably wouldn't exist today, right? So he's important more for Buddhism, but he's a major leader of the Mauryan Empire at this time period. We'll talk about this one text, probably the most famous and maybe most important text today for Hinduism is the Bhagavad Gita. The Gita is the way that most Hindus know their religion, know about the gods, and the way they should have a relationship with the gods. We'll talk a little bit about, it's the most famous television program in basically world history. It has the highest viewer ratings. We normally think, well, it has to be something out of Hollywood. Nope. There's a lot of people in India. When the Gita was on, people were like, let's tune in. And so it has these huge ratings. And that's how a lot of people came to know their religion in the 20th century. The golden age of India is with the Gupta dynasty in northern India. I had one student in my class last semester who does some kind of, does like a banking, does telecom banking basically with people in India. And he was like, why is there so many people with the last name Gupta that are like upper management that I deal with? And it's basically because of this empire, this time period. The Gupta dynasty is in the 4th century CE, so roughly the time period where pagan Rome converts to Christianity, Roman Catholicism. The reason it's an important part for the history of Hinduism is this is a time period of revival of the old Vedic Aryan culture. They copy down Vedic texts, and so the older texts are like destroyed and lost to time. But we know there were earlier ones, and they copied these ones, and these are the ones that we have existing today that we can look at. And so it's sort of, because of that revival, we know more about what happened earlier because of the copies that took place. In the 8th century CE, like we mentioned, Islam comes to India about a century after the death of Muhammad. At first they build city-states, they take over some of the cities like the Delhi Sultanate, and eventually they take over whole regions and create the Mughal Empire, and they rule as a monotheistic religion as a minority over a polytheistic Hindu majority. There's a certain difficulty and dynamic. We'll talk a little bit more about that specifically when we come to the section on Islam, but probably like if you've seen the Taj Mahal, you're probably like, hey, that looks like Islamic architecture in India. It is. Because of the Mughal Empire, right? So that's why that's there. It's why there's so many Muslims in India today is because of the Mughal Empire. Europeans come to India in the modern world, starting in the 1500s with the Spaniards and the Portuguese. If you've ever wondered why Chris Columbus, is willing to just sail west, right? And he's looking for a shortcut to India. And he gets to the Americas, and he's like, you guys, this is India. You're Indians, right? And they're like, no, this is not India. We are not Indians. And he's like, you guys are Indians. And so we call Native Americans Indians? Because some dude made a mistake? That seems kind of dumb, right? But we just keep doing that. I don't really know what to say. He thought he was in India, he was not, right? The reason that the Europeans are looking for a shortcut to India is it's a long way around Africa to get to India to get those spices. And if you've ever tasted British food, it's awful. It's really bland, but you need spices. So they had a problem of the middleman through the Silk Road. How do you get those spices without paying for them? They try to go around Africa, but they lose half their boats that leave ports. So they're looking for a shortcut, and Chris is dumb enough to take his boat and try to sail it off the end of the flat world. But then he realizes it's not so flat, right? That's sort of the notion. When this takes place, the British at some point take over India with their company. It becomes a corporate territory with the British East Indies Company. Then later on, there's a revolt because